Yeah, guys. I'm the world around you, and this is Pause for Thought on Threshold FM. If you're listening to Threshold FM on the desktop, download the app, and maybe fucking swap it about a bit. Don't always listen on the app. Listen on the desktop as well. Listen to it on both. Make it seem like there's more listeners than what we can cope with. Fucking anyway. It's been a while, hasn't it, since I've done a proper episode, if you like, because of that the couple that scares together interview lasting 3 weeks, and I hope you've enjoyed that. I might do more interviews with other like-minded podcasters and that in the future, but maybe not for a while. What I thought I would do, because it has been quite a while since I picked apart a kids' film, so I thought I'd find another kids' film that I've never seen, like The Last Airbender. I'd never seen that, and I don't think I'd ever seen The Little Mermaid before, so we watched them, and then try and figure out what the hidden messages are that are left in there for your kids to pick up, in the formative years. Like, what are they trying to get in your kids' heads? So, this week is a Dreamworks title, Megamind, a blue-skinned humanoid with a massive head. He definitely looks a bit alien, innit? So let's see how it goes. I know nothing about this film, innit, just from the offset here. I'm doing this more of like from reading the notes that I've taken, because I won't be able to keep all this in my head. These are literally like this. You'll get it anyway. You've heard the Little Mermaid one and that. So, and I'd heard of the Little Mermaid. I had an idea of the story, and I had an idea of the story of the Last Airbender because I'd seen the cartoon, and the Lion King as well. But this time I'm going in completely blind, which I think is the first time where it's completely blind. The synopsis itself says it's about supervillains, so I'm hoping it'll be pretty dark, even if it is a kids' film. So, the film starts with the blue-skinned fella falling from the sky, and it looks like they're falling directly out of the sun as well. We've all heard people say to dying people, go into the light. But what if it's possible for whatever's beyond that light to come through in this direction and all? Like, it makes sense that these creatures would have special powers that most humans don't possess, innit? So, anyway, the character sends us back to his childhood, where he's 8 days old and he gets bundled into some form of fucking spacecraft accompanied by what is like a weird looking fish in a bowl, and then they're thrust off their planet just before it's eaten by a black hole. Now, from there, he races with this rival alien towards Earth, where the blue one gets raised by prisoners and the other baby gets raised by rich people. And this bit here, immediately within like 10 seconds of the film, it's obviously a bit to try and teach your kids that if they're born in like a city and that, they're more destined to be poor and live their life in shackles, as when he's approaching his teenage years. The blue-skinned guy says he got some time off for good behaviour, but in reality he was just born in the wrong place, and that's something that they're trying to get across to your kids there. Now, it might just be a throwaway line, innit, but it seems to play into that whole NPC conspiracy as well, like the non-playable character conspiracy, that there's not every person in the world is a real person. Because or maybe not real, but significant real people in the world, and then the rest are NPCs, because this blue guy refers to the other kids literally as mindless drones. But maybe this is to ready your child for when there are mindless drones and clones of children still sent to school after years of the government's perfecting the schooling system on real people's children. After decades of perfecting the teaching techniques, they'll finally open up schools to the clone kids, and they'll blend in seamlessly. The only difference between the clone kids and real children is that the clone kids won't have any aspirations, and instead of wanting to get an apprenticeship or to run their own business, instead they'll just do whatever they're told by the computer chips placed inside them when they were built. Now, the school system for now could be a way of training the clones all at once, and a way of subtly teaching the real children to be more like the clones. Maybe it's like the film, the blue guy says the other alien child is surrounded by these mindless drones, so what if every school class is one or two actual real humans, like living sentient beings, whilst the other 28-ish members of the class are skin-covered drones, robots made to aid in the illusion of childhood? There's another weird bit here though as well. This young kid, the good alien as he's called, seems to have muscles and keeps winking at the teacher. So could this be a thing to make kids think that they should be flirting with the teachers from a young age? Because if it is, that does sound very Hollywood, innit, to be honest. Anyway, the blue guy, turns out the blue guy is Megamind, like that's who the film's named after, and I hadn't clocked this until now. And the good guy is called Metro Man. So could this be a way to teach kids that the good guy is posh or wealthy, whilst the bad guy is from the inner city? It could be that, but it could also be a way to teach children that being clever is actually to be evil and to be miserable, whereas if you're wealthy and muscular, you'll be, better liked and inherently good, or viewed as good by society. In the next scene, we see Megamind speaking to the prison warden, but the warden steals his watch, and the watch has a little light on top of it that says recording. Could that be a way to get kids subtly used to the idea that their watch could be recording and watching them? Like, this is 11 years ago, mate. Or is it a way to show that technology is literally from aliens? The watch is a gift from one alien to another in the film. Two aliens that seem to battle each other on Earth as well. So maybe all technology that we have at the moment is directly from aliens. Next, we see a reporter that is apparently in a relationship of sorts with Metro Man, the good guy, and she gets abducted by a furry sleeve in an invisible car. Now, this immediately draws to mind the Men in Black and Bigfoot. Maybe it's a way to link the two things together in the minds of your children. Perhaps the Men in Black dress in long coats and suits to hide their fur-covered skin, innit? But whilst they're driving, though, they're just naked, with the fur flicking around in the air conditioning and that. That same watch from before, though, is then shown to be able to create holograms around people, or what's, I guess it would also be called like shapeshifting. It allows for shapeshifting. So far, we've got alien shapeshifters, and I've most recently paused it to write this when I made these notes at 9 minutes 37 seconds into the film. Like, that's how far into the film we are now. So I reckon this is going to be fucking full of hidden messages and that, The furry arm that we saw is actually the fish that I mentioned earlier. It's a weird alien fish in a ball that's now connected to what literally looks like a Bigfoot without a head. Instead of a head, it's got a fish bowl with a fish in it. So now we have alien hybrids, animal hybrids, aliens and shapeshifters, and we're still not even 10 minutes into the film. Metro Man seems to a bit like what I imagine Jesus would be like in a modern world, like proper fucking full of himself. Oh, build a statue of me here, build a statue of me there, fucking thumbs up and pointing like the fucking View Askew universe Jesus, and all at the same time he's pretending to be humble. Anyway, the journalist, she was abducted and taken back to the evil man's lair, Megamind's lair. Could this be a way of trying to teach the children and ready the masses for the fake news takeover? The idea that the news will be taken over by an evil person and use that journalist for their own means. There is another sort of reference here though. The woman's in a red dress, but in the Matrix, the woman in the red dress was there to distract Neo from the simulation, to keep him focused on the simulation and believing the simulation was real. So maybe we should try to ignore the woman in her scenes and focus on what's going on around her, and what's happening around her is Megamind is now being attacked by the very machine he thought he had tamed. Like, imagine like a fucking flying bear trap with a glass eye on a stalk, a red glass eye on a stalk, with one of those is it a Tesla coil, the static ball like things where you touch it and static touches your finger through the glass. One of them, but on the machine's head. And then he's stroking it on the chair like a fucking James Bond villain. I was going to say Batman villain, but I mean James Bond villain, stroking it, and then it fucking clamps onto his arm, mate. It's turned on him. Maybe this, though, could be another reference to the Matrix, a way of teaching the children that the machines have been created by this evil alien that came to our planet, and that the very machines they've made will, in turn, turn against them. And probably us, but maybe it's less literal and it's more so about how machines in general are going to turn on humans, just like in the Matrix. Now, the evil guy's got an alligator pit in it instead of a shark pit. Now, this might be a way to show how the invading aliens originally used giant reptiles to control the Earth and possibly terraform the Earth. There's the dinosaurs, as one example, but then there was loads of what seemed like giant reptile references in ancient Egypt as well, though. So maybe there was some sort of workforce, like the giant alligators, the crocodiles, the monsters, the dinosaurs, the ancient Egyptian gods that kind of looked like crocodiles and stuff, and lizards and snakes. Maybe they were the workforce of the aliens, maybe made from the creatures that were on Earth, mixed with some of their DNA. I don't know, many scientists I'm aware of reference a part in the brain of humans known as the R brain, or the reptilian brain, a part of the brain that supposedly came first, and since then creatures have evolved to have more advanced brains. Now, this is something that is directly referenced a few seconds before in the film, because them machine pets that Megamind has, they've actually got a little tiny brain in each one. Maybe it's showing the kids, teaching your children that the aliens tried this with dinosaurs, and we obviously can we can see the fish, Bigfoot, cyborg unit thing known as Minion, but now they're going to go and mix robots and living tissue together for mass production, creating an army of controllable creatures just like the dinosaurs. The journalist then says the spiders knew, because she's being like shown loads of torture devices and the spider drops down in front of her face, almost as if to say that spiders were introduced to the world by aliens or by the extra-dimensional entities just for the sake of inclusion, but they've done it to cause fear. Like, spiders have infiltrated our very homes and they freak out most people that come into contact with them, innit? So if the aliens or the extra-dimensional beings really do feed off of negative human emotion, then a spider is a great way to get a bit of fear in every single house. It's a way of introducing fear into the home. Maybe a really happy household would never encourage a demon or an extra-dimensional being into their home, but by releasing some of those fear pheromones that they see, that work as a sort of like a response to the... As a response to that, the fear pheromones are like, yes, please do come in to the ethereal vampiric entities. Then, once they're in, they're here to stay. There's a statue that is released as well for Metro Man, and it's a lot like how the ancients used to create statues for the gods, which got me wondering. We don't see many statues of gods nowadays unless they're ancient and, like proper old. A lot of our statues now are human. They're mainly like war heroes and that, but what if that's going against the Ten Commandments, though, about idol worship? What if that's why bad stuff keeps happening? Because when the planet Nibiru comes back, or the aliens otherwise reach Earth whilst doing their rounds of the galaxy, they see that all of their statues have gone and they've been replaced by humans. This would be going, against their rules, the 10 rules. Because if you imagine for a second that the rules that Moses got on I think it was Mount Sinai, were actually from a spacecraft and rather from a talking plant, then you can imagine that these rules came from visiting aliens that fucking pop past us, in the sky. Anyway, back to the film. We see the clouds gather quickly over Metro Man, and Megamind's behind it, showing children that, or like trying to coerce your kids into believing that pollution is evil, or more likely though, to show them and introduce them to the idea of HARP, the weather weapon manipulation technology that is supposedly doing the rounds around the world, and getting it into their brains, dripping it into their brains just a little bit so they accept it 40 years down the line more readily. Now, in the film, they make Megamind out to be evil with these robots and the weather tech, and then they throw in that he's got baby seal leather boots as well, which fucking, to be fair, pissed me off, because it's a way of manipulating your kids into connecting taxidermists and leather workers with evil people, which is fucking annoying. But if you look at the way the world's going, people don't really seem to be all that keen on people using animal products, which is fucking dumb. Because obviously I'm a taxidermist and that's literally my bread and butter. So I don't want to. I'm not condoning any of the messages in these films, but if there's one message from this film I don't want you to take away, it's that people that use leather and that and skin are bad people, because we're not. I mean, some might be, but some greengrocers are bad. There's got to be, like, I don't think I've ever really done anything that would go overboard and really bad. But greengrocers, mate, some greengrocers might have done some dodgy stuff, You don't know, do you? You never know. Anyway, though, this film, though, because of this sort of, these animal bits here with the leather workers and that trying to make seal leather look evil, the users of seal leather, maybe the film was secretly funded by an animal rights group who, we know that they love to try and manipulate people through any form of media that they can get their fucking grubby little hands on. Anyway, the clouds cover the city, but only like they did though in the first Spider-Man game on PS1, innit? Like the rooftops are still clear as it zooms out. Possibly, showing the kids and showing us, me as a kid, that if you get high in society, that there's nothing but bright days ahead for you. Whereas if you live amongst normal people, like lower down in society, literally lower down, your life will be dictated to by the weather and the evil people, and you'll live your life worshipping a creature of unfathomable power. Then there's this painful back and forth that he's literally saying about how Megamind wants to slowly corrupt the ideas of the people of Metro City, like you would rust a metal or you'd melt down a metal, just like what you would do if you wanted to build a new world. You'd have to melt down all the metal, wouldn't you? The two characters here are referring to, like, quote unquote justice, which might be the makers of the film trying to teach kids that justice or the justice system is flawed and could be easily manipulated, like a metal can be. Considering this film was released in 2010, it's very possible that it could be responsible for a lot of people's beliefs towards the justice system today. Is it possible that Megamind the movie was the catalyst for the many teenagers that seem to believe in defunding the police? We may never know. Won't take up too much of your time, boss. Just wanted to say thank you for listening, mate. I appreciate you giving it the time of day, I know you've probably got a lot of other stuff you could listen to. So to listen to me ramble on about what I assume is just utter shite, then, that's fucking mad, mate. If you feel like you want to learn more, or I say learn loosely. If you're interested in reading my ebooks, mate, give them a go. There'll be a link in the thing below. The link will also link you to all my other stuff, like stuff I've made out of rats and other radio shows as well that I've done. I'll let you get back on. Harp gets another mention now, and it's because Megamind is trying to harness the power of the sun, like immediately after showing he can control the clouds and that. It's unclear whether he wants to cause droughts to sell more water, or whether he wants to turn some places into lush rainforest to farmland though. Like, I think he just calls it the death ray, which is a bit boring, isn't it? Not all that creative really for the name of something, but we then find out that Metro Man is actually weak to copper. And if you think about it, copper is everywhere. It's also pretty valuable, so maybe the evil people put copper everywhere to drain the powers of the extra-dimensional beings, zapping their powers so that they can no longer protect us. Then they use their connections in the media to make everyone fearful or ignorant to the supernatural in order to literally fucking demonise them. On a side note though, this could be another way to turn young people against the police forces of the world though, because, obviously police officers are known all around the world as coppers. So here what they've done is instill the phrase, "copper makes me weak," into the minds of millions of children all around the world. Now, Megamind's laser fires down on the observatory, which could be a visual representation, really, on how modern science, which is, by modern science, I don't mean, just come out yesterday, I just mean the science that's pushed by the school system and academia and academics, how that modern science destroyed the notion of paying attention to the stars and the sky. It could also speak of a sort of disconnect to the rest of the universe created by the evil Megamind, maker of the robots. There's then some more subtle brainwashing going on. There is this use of a rainbow, and it also has Megamind on a TV at the same time saying, "I did it." Now this could be a number of things. It could reference the destruction of the connection to the greater universe, because obviously, as we know from previous weeks, the rainbow can symbolise a bridge between worlds. Or it could be much, much more insidious than that, and it could be using potentially the gay pride symbol, whilst a supervillain gloats about destroying the protector of the human race, a way to make young people think that those under the banner of LGBTQ may have had a hand in removing the protective aliens of the world, to turn people against each other. Or maybe it's just a way to make your brain associate the happiness usually brought about by a rainbow with the evil person, to try and get you used to the idea that these evil people are actually, in fact, good people. We then see Megamind come out of a puff of smoke using lights and lasers, and he tells the police and guards to drop their weapons as he appears to materialise out of nowhere. This is what I imagine will happen when they open the door to another universe, though, innit? Or to at least, like other dimensions. Because by the time this happens, it's going to be too late for people to retaliate, and he's making them put down. If you want to look at it even deeper, right, going away from my notes for a second, you could make it seem even deeper by he's literally saying, "Put down your weapons," and they put down their weapons. So have they been brainwashed? Are they being hypnotised? Or is it a weird way of showing like a weird vibrational sound wave weapon? Because he makes a sound at them and they like pacify themselves, innit? Anyway, the lasers go from making a show in the sky to resemble a system that looks like barcode scanning, like they're scanning the people. A lot like what people are currently worried about, innit? Like, people think that we're being constantly assessed and catalogued. So maybe we will get a hint as to what it is that Megamind's the Megaminds of the other dimensions. What are they really measuring us for? Will the film tell us? The song in the background as well is Highway to Hell, and hell is a place that's supposed to be full of demons. So to see this fella appear from the smoke whilst referencing hell does seem quite fitting, rather than it just being a song that fits the scene, because any song could have really fit the scene, any sort of like rock song. Why did it have to be about hell? So, and stepping aside from the film though, for a minute or so, hell's supposed to be, the home of the devil, and his legion of fallen angels as well, and demons, and obviously, evil spirits. Alongside though, with dead humans who were naughty in school but got killed before they could go to their first, confession. Like kids that were naughty and got hit by a bus, or people that lied and got hit by a car before they could apologise. Obviously murderers, rapists, obviously unborn babies that never got prayed for. Some people believe they go purgatory, other people believe they go straight to hell. It's a bit of a grey area. But my question isn't where do the morals of the religious founders lie with torturing dead children for eternity, or literally torturing anyone that isn't Catholic, whether they were the best people that lived. Do you know what I mean? Like they could literally be like Metro Man, the superhero, but unfortunately be born in a predominantly Hindu country. So now, even though they followed all of God's rules, they weren't actually a member of God's group because they were of the wrong religion. So that they weren't baptized into Catholicism. So literally to hell with them. But as I say, that isn't the problem or question I want to focus on. My question is, if humans exist because the Bible says God made us, and there are no mentions of God making other humanoid peoples, then what exactly are demons, and why is hell full of them? What creature or manner of creature are they, and why do religious people believe in them? Why are all demons innately evil, but all angels are good, except for the angels that the devil took to hell with him after his attempted coup? So there can be good angels and bad angels, but there's only ever bad demons. It just seems bizarre. Anyway, we'll get back to the film. This isn't about angels and demons, which is another film. Which, this took me 7 hours to watch this hour and a half film. So I think if I was to try and analyse Angels and Demons, that Tom Hanks film, I don't think anyone would want to hear it. It'd go on for way too long. But as I say, getting back to the film, a point does get raised here by the journalist. Now that you've beat Metro Man, what are you going to do with us? That's the journalist's advice. This is a good question though, because it applies to rich people and the fears that people genuinely have about the 1%. Realistically, I doubt that the 1% care about the rest of the world at all. They'll be so swept up in their own goals, and the idea of impacting the rest of the world is probably not even near the middle of the list of things that they need to worry about. And it looks a lot like Megamind doesn't know what he wants to do with himself either. Minion explains what a window is, and Megamind hasn't got a clue what a window is. Now, Minion says all the kids are looking into them nowadays, so could this be a little thing of saying that, like, phone screens are windows to another dimension, another world, another plane of existence? Do you know what I mean? Or, could this have been an attack on the use of computers back in 2010? Because, I know I had a computer back in 2010, not to show off, I'm not trying to show off by saying that, but I did. I had a computer in 2010, and most people that I knew did, but computers never seemed important back then, especially nowhere near as important as what they seem now, 11 years later. In all honesty, it was actually university that made me realise the importance of computers in your life, because I hadn't really definitely had to use one until then, which made me think that maybe posh people have probably known of the significance of computers for a lot longer than what regular people have. And maybe that's the reference to Windows here, with Megamind not knowing what one is, because, he was brought up in a literal prison cell where he didn't have windows, although he did have a porthole on his door, which is a window, it's a type of window, but he didn't have a computer. So it maybe there is a link. Now, there are posters all over the place now as well with Megamind's face on it, with that blue, red and white weird pop art style kind of thing that looks like that Marilyn Monroe picture, but in blue, red and white. Like, what politicians had, where it says underneath the quote, it says, "No, you can't," which kind of reminds me, I think, in style at least, but I think the president, it reminds me of his Obama, and this raises another real-world concern. When you see a foreign country with loads of posters of the leader or potential leader on the walls and banners, you immediately think to yourself, one word, mate: dictatorship. But when you see Americans doing it, you just think healthy democratic competition, and that's just something that's always felt weird to me. And obviously this is more of a dictatorship in the film. Anyway, Megamind shows that he's lost interest in the world already, because he's no longer got a nemesis, you know. Is that what has actually happened, though, in the real world? Could the likes of, you know, like people who are so up there, like JP Morgan, let's say, could he have been like a superhero who fought against some oppressors, but then his life became boring and empty because he won his fight? Maybe JP Morgan fought the aliens in one way or another, using the copper, putting the railroads down so he could suck all the energy out of the earth and fire it at spaceships from fucking weird cannons, you know, and fire it at weird cannons from the spaceship, like destroy the spaceship from the train tracks, you know, with like a fucking laser beam, or even to suck up the energy of the fucking aliens and fire it back at them. Like, we don't know. We honestly I don't know. I don't know if they were responsible for that, but. Like, because we know that there's a good potential, like, allegedly they've stockpiled money and that, innit? Like, they're minted. So, and that's like what Megamind is seen to have done in the film. The journalist then asks Megamind if he is happy now, you know, and this seems like a way to teach children, again, to not have ambitions, because it's going to upset everyone you know when you actually achieve them, because their life still carries on, you know, but you've gotten to the end of your goal, kind of like what school is for children and colleges to many teenagers, and what university does to unmotivated middle-class people. It gives you a goal that makes you focus on it, and you feel like a sense of achievement in it once you've reached the end, and then that's it, because you've felt that sense of achievement. What you've been working towards is over. And then a lot of people decide, I'm not going to try anything ever again. I'm not going to try to achieve anything ever again. Fuck it, it don't matter. You know, because that you've focused on it, innit, and then that goal has been achieved. You no longer have something to strive for. You know, you give up. So that means you're now a useful member of society, because you'll just accept whatever role you're put into. And it's difficult to tell whether this message in Megamind is a warning to the children watching that they need to keep aiming for a new goal to give their life meaning, or if it's to stop children from having aspirations altogether. Now, there is a throwaway line here, it feels like a throwaway line, about becoming a slave army, whilst the blue-skinned man observes through a window from an elevated position. Now, if we really grasp at straws here, we can see a statue of Metro Man holding a planet. So what if this represents a creature that is observing our planet from an elevated position? For example, the moon, mate, because sticking with Catholicism there, you know, there was that song about God having, you know, he's got the whole world in his hands, that song, and in this it does seem as though Metro Man is viewed as a god and he's got the world in his hands. So if you're observing that world, you'd have to be watching from the moon. So maybe the leader of the world, who's won and beat the aliens, lives inside the moon. Now, you could also argue that there are other moon references, because Metro Man's face looks like a crescent moon from the side, because he's got one of them fucking big chins, mate, big superhero chin. And it keeps getting shown, though, they keep showing his face in profile with the backdrop of the night sky. And another conspiracy comes to mind. The Great Reset is literally mentioned. If only the world had a reset button, and Megamind says he looked into it and the science is impossible. Now, this is 8 or 9 years before the Great Reset kind of became a mainstream conspiracy as well. The idea that the planet can be reset, almost like it's put back in time. Now, what if that used to be something that would work for 1,000 or so years, and society would take 1,000 years to get back to where it was, and then it was repeated? But now it happens every 100 years because of so-called fucking morals or ethics, you know. Them sort of things that cloudy the water and make things impossible to do. Like, what if that is why ethics is taught to people, like at school and college and even at university to a degree? You know, they're always trying to teach people ethics. Oh, think of other people. Like, you can't get anywhere if you think of other people, really, realistically, can you? Unless you're like a fucking bus driver or a taxi driver, and you literally have to think of people to get them to places. But I mean, that's not what I mean, and that's a shit joke, really, innit? But I genuinely mean it, though. That's I didn't mean it as a joke as such, though. There's no. If you keep focusing on other people like that, you're not really going to achieve anything yourself, innit? But by teaching people morals, a system of morals and a system of ethics, it makes people scared and worried that they're going to choose to do something that will be deemed unethical. Oh, I shouldn't do that because it's unethical. It's not illegal, it's just unethical. And then surely if something's deemed unethical for long enough, surely then it will get forced into law and people will be much more accepting of it, which is fucking terrifying. But, I mean, maybe that's why ethics is taught, though. That's, so that they can manipulate people further. But by putting it into films like this and associating it kind of with science and that as well in the film, and either way, it could make them, the ethics and that and the moral side of it could make people turn soft, innit? And it does. Obviously, it's going to make people turn soft, but make them turn soft on one another, and so that no one will ever press the big reset button. Because, I mean, as an idea here, just to go completely off, what if the idea of the nuclear bombs, and everyone's, all these countries have nuclear bombs and the launch codes and the button, what if they don't? Like, that would be the biggest move ever. What if nuclear bombs came from aliens, and that's why there's that footage and reports of spacecraft coming over and firing laser beams down and deactivating nuclear bombs? What if that's a way of teaching us that, they're not actually going to do it? And obviously they have existed, but what if that was something that happened and they did it, they showed the effects of it, by using it and using it in the sea and using it on fucking Japan and, fucking to show this is what could happen. And then they made, the aliens may have made the leaders of the world believe they had a button they could press that would fire a nuclear bomb. Now, if they know that they've got that button and they know that their nemesis has that button, they're going to be a lot less likely to press it, but everyone feels safer because they've got the button to press. But the safest thing and the smartest thing to do is to not actually give anybody a nuclear bomb at all, but you want to still make them believe that they've got some nuclear bombs, because realistically, not many people would be willing to fire them off. And you've got to hope that they're the people that get into power, I guess. Anyway, getting back to the film and the Great Reset. If you think about it, the Great Reset logically, the world's population's at its highest it's ever been, and if 1% of the population have all the power of the world, then presumably that's a lot more people in control than there has been throughout all of human history. So why would all these people have the agreement that it should be wiped away for a restart? Like, maybe some are in agreement and others aren't. Maybe the ones that disagree with it are the rich business tycoon families, of the past 200 years, whereas they may be in constant battle with the monarchies of the world, making the monarchies the positive people, making the monarchies the good guy, making the queen the good girl, and the princes and the kings all the good guys, just like in Star Wars, man. In Star Wars, the royal families are the good people, aren't they? Whereas the bureaucrats and the things like that are the bad guys. Anyway, it then says in the film that heroes aren't born, they're made, which is another nod to human engineering. Megamind then says they need certain ingredients, and then there are lots of stuff about cloning people, specifically cloning the alien Metro Man to create more aliens, or at least a serum of the alien to inject into a person. Like in the X-Files, like in Pokemon when they made Mewtwo, like in Evangelisis when the 13th, how they made the 13th angel in Neo Genesis Evangelion, which isn't Evangelisis. I've just fucking combined all the words, which is weird. That's why it sounded so weird as I said it. Anyway, it's only took, we're 33 minutes and 37 seconds into the film at this point, and it's literally the same story as every other children's film and series I've watched in the past few years, which does beg the question, am I falling into a certain type of psychological episode? Am I already experiencing some form of delusion? Is the world trying to tell me something? Is there someone trying to tell the world something? Are TV and film writers ridiculously lazy? Or are we living in a finite simulation that uses a bunch of, let's say, 5 different stories, and it keeps producing content using AI to stop most of us from realising that everything is a pattern that just repeats itself? A lot like the shower curtains and t-shirts that are available from my Redbubble shop. You can find my link tree, that's linktr.ee/worldaroundyou. You can find the Redbubble on there, and you can get loads of repeating patterns for yourself. It's very difficult to tell. Next, we get a bit of back and forth where the evil Megamind and his fishy minion talk to each other in coded messages. Except the codes are actually the exact thing that they're saying, almost as if to teach kids that everything that looks like a hidden message actually is a hidden message. Now, could this have been to prime everybody for the rising conspiracy, to make everybody think everything's a conspiracy and make everyone think that everything links to everything else? Because they've got codes like fucking code get the car, which literally means get me the car. Do you know what I mean? Like, so there's a hidden meaning there, a hidden meaning, but the hidden meaning is just as obvious as the actual message that they're saying. It's like a double bluff. So is that to make everyone think that people are just double bluffing with all this conspiracy stuff? So actually the conspiracy stuff could be all real and true. I mean, I'm not the one to say it. I'm just putting these ideas out there, innit? I'm not trying to tell you either way. I am not the makers of Megamind, The Lion King, The Little Mermaid, The Last Airbender. I'm not trying to manipulate you in any way, shape or form. I just want to get you thinking, get you there. But the hidden messages, that could mean that when we do see a hidden message in the movie, like the one about the school system from earlier on, that it's only supposed to appear like a hidden message. But actually the hidden messages are that obvious you cannot avoid them. And the messages are all that movies are about. Like the actual story in the film is irrelevant. It's all about the hidden messages. Like that's the only reason to watch a film. Like the people that play video games just for the Easter eggs. I just watch films for the hidden messages. Like, what are they trying to teach me? What can I learn from this about aliens and gods and myths? Even if it's Titanic. I mean, even then in Titanic, like Titanic in itself is a whole other conspiracy, which will probably get its own episode as well. To be fair, I should probably write that down. If I did have a pen in my hand, I'd make a note of it. Anyway, because there's the stories though. The stories seem irrelevant because they're all the same, innit? Like, I think it'd be fun to watch loads of these films over a few days and then try and piece the messages that are confined in them together to see what we can learn by watching 6 different films by 6 different production companies, to see if there is actually a message that can be pieced together. That would be a good way to prove if everything I'm perceiving in these films is actually just there to test me and to see if I can work out, and see if I can spread the message to you, the listener, via threshold.fm. Now, we get some talks about Destiny in it as well now, getting back off me high horse. We get some talks about Destiny, as if these people believe that everything is predetermined, which is exactly how it would be if the whole world is actually scripted, like a simulation would be scripted. Now, we see Megamind Shapeshift whilst the Jonah Hill character transforms from fat guy into an Adonis, and he has a bit of a glow about him as well, but more importantly, blue clothing and white hair. A lot like the description, this is Megamind now, the descriptions of the Venusian aliens we've heard about in the past, or if you remember my episode about the tall whites, a tall white. Megamind now speaks in disguise as well, like an Italian mobster would in a gangster film, like that's the voice he's using. Could this be a way of showing kids that it was actually the mob or the Vatican, because they're kind of related, they worked together allegedly during World War II or World War I, and that they've been creating these superhumans amongst themselves just to keep life interesting for themselves in the real world? Minion, the fish, suggests a change of tactic a little later on, and his voice gets drowned out then by the voice of Megamind and the music of Electric Light Orchestra. But in the background, just audible, is Minion suggesting to use video games to train the new hero alien-human hybrid. So, what if that's actually what's going on? Because that there is a literal evidence that video games are at least, or they're a method at least of teaching something to someone, Maybe they had to create a whole industry around it to make it less obvious. Or possibly they've just lost track of their hybrids and their experiments and they're out there now living as normal people and they're like, well, we've got to try and get them and to learn, so we'll just release these to the masses and hope they play them. We'll repeat the same game for years and years and years and years and years and years, and people will still buy it, and hopefully one day one of the hybrids will buy it and immediately learn from it, or they'll see a little message in it which will fucking activate them. It's hard to guess because there's so many games out there. And an old game, and one game that does have a lot of games out there, which I think is it what 35 years old, Mario, and like we see a representation of the old Mario game, like the original Donkey Kong, with Minion the Bigfoot cyborg throwing barrels down a bunch of scaffolding, and maybe that's what Mario initially was, just the beginning of teaching people that they will one day have to face off against sentient creatures that seem, for all purposes, to be from other worlds. Maybe part of the real world future will be superhumans. A very realistic thing happens. The Jonah Hill guy finds out that he will be called Titan because it's the only name that Megamind could trademark. Now in this scene, Megamind is still talking like the mobster, like the Italian guy, so, and it's that sort of, well, I assume maybe they don't all sound like that. Maybe it's just me that thinks that maybe that's just a regular New York accent. Fuck knows. I don't know. I'm not from there. But, if they can think that we're all posh and like the Queen, then I can think that they all sound like gangsters. But anyway, Titan is called Titan because that's the only name that Megamind could trademark. So once there is, the opportunity for money in pitting these superhumans against each other, maybe they will be known, to the world, and they'll open them up as events, unless that's where the next wars are headed. Instead of rich people selling weapons to each other to kill off millions, maybe they'll own their own superhumans, and they'll pit them against each other in cities and place bets on the carnage caused, like the number of deaths, whilst also making money by selling the merchandise of the superhero. Because imagine if you can have, literally a superhero that's just for America, like fucking, let's say, Mr. America, because the obvious one's taken. And then Mr. Britain or Mr. German and or Mrs. Dutch or something, I don't fucking know. But then each country would really back them, so you could replace the Olympic Games with superhuman fights, and then you could destroy whole cities with them. People will then buy the merch because my city got saved. They always win on the home turf as well, kind of like is it the Harlem Globetrotters? Don't they? Is it that they always win? That's the gimmick. That's why people go, because they get to see what seem like the best basketball players ever. But yeah, that's just an idea. That's how they could make a bit of money out of this, and because merchandise, especially because every man and his dog's got merchandise now, innit? It's already been normalised, that part now. Even I've got merchandise, and it's available from redbubble.com. Now, the guy that was the bad guy, Megamind, now he wants to be the good guy. And that's an interesting thing that can't ever really happen in the real world, because if Megamind existed, or his equivalent existed, who's done loads of evil and destructive things to the world, suddenly, and he decides suddenly that he wants to be the good guy now and he wants to help, I don't think he'd be able to do it because of the history and the legend attached to him. No one would ever agree that what they're doing is good. They'd see it as he's either just pretending to be good, or he's doing it to try and win people over, or it's part of some other big scheme. And maybe that is why the history you're taught at school is so limited. It completely ignores the idea that money is typically the root of most of the problems, or the fact that invading other countries tends to work out badly for all involved unless it happened in the 1900s. And maybe that is so that new legends can be built around the richest people in the world to make them seem philanthropic, like with Iron Man in the film Iron Man, or with Iron Man in the film Iron Man 2, or, Iron Man in the film Iron Man 3. Because the Starks were a family that originally sold weapons, but the most recent heir to the business's throne, if you like, Tony, decided that they wanted to help people and not just be rich from selling munitions to insurgents and the American army. That's the idea of someone who realistically, by society standards, is truly evil, evolving into a better person. And, weirdly, the Marvel films have hybridization, aliens, and even a reset of the world twice. Megamind ends up quickly flickering through his various skins. We've got the mobster-sounding guy, the police warden, and I remember in They Live, the film They Live, great film, that the police were mostly, if not all, aliens. So what if this is alluding to every prison warden or person in power being an alien? Maybe even all being the same alien at once. What if the idea of the collective consciousness is true, and they're the true inhabitants of Earth, and we, the humans, are the aliens? And what if that's what NPCs are? NPCs are actually just a collective consciousness, and that's why it seems so easy to indoctrinate some people. We're learning loads from this film. Back in the film now, Megamind is unhappy, and the weather gets affected by his unhappiness. Now, this is a trope we've seen in other films like The Little Mermaid and The Lion King as well, which I keep mentioning The Lion King this time. That's the first film I ever did like this, but it was before Threshold, before I got on Threshold. I think actually doing that, I think that's what Jimmy Budd saw me doing in this voice, like what I call Kieran, in the character of Kieran. But to actually do this for an hour is fucking difficult, and it makes me feel a bit weird, and it kind of hurts my face because I've got to really feel like I'm separating my cheekbones from the rest of my face. So I don't do that voice, but I think that's how I got the show here on Threshold FM. But that one anyway was only 25 minutes long, so if you want to hear that, it's on my YouTube and my Facebook page or Apple or Spotify, wherever. I've put it on there. But anyway, the weather in that gets affected by the main characters as well. Like, they take over Scar takes over the Pride Lands. The Pride Land becomes barren and don't rain. Simba comes back with some rain and a fucking thunderstorm. You know, the weather in films gets affected by the main characters. Now, why is that? Media analysts and English teachers, they'll try to make you believe it's to convey emotion, but that's silly, because if these people or creatures aren't real, then why would their emotions matter at all? Like, it's got to be something more, hasn't it? Like, kids don't need to be taught about emotions, because they're either available to a kid or they're not. You don't need to know about them. You're either an emotional person or you're not an emotional person. Like who cares? So it's got to be showing that maybe the weather is controlled by the will of a person or a creature. So maybe harp isn't a weapon that's been created, but instead a natural system that has been tuned into by some very emotional people, and they're using their emotions to control that creature. Or perhaps they control our emotional state in order to influence the weather. Maybe there's a chance that the ethereal entities were on Earth long before us, and they've been using the weather in order to sustain themselves. Maybe by keeping us miserable with bad weather and depressed, it makes the weather, or maybe by keeping us depressed and miserable, it makes the weather wetter, which is what they need for some reason, or so that they can, rather than feeding off of our negative emotions directly, maybe it's the same way that we use food to feed off of the sun, if that makes sense. Because we can't just eat soil, but we can eat the soil if it's been processed. And we can't eat the soil and sunlight, not for very long anyway, or you won't survive on it. And then if you allow a plant to process that sunlight and soil, you can eat what the plant produces and some of the plants. Whereas maybe that's what the ethereal entities need to do. Maybe we're their way of converting emotion or some form of life force, energy force, you know. Anyway, back to the film. Megamind's now dressed in all black, again, a lot like the Men in Black. Maybe the Men in Black created a hybrid or a selection of hybrids, and this Earth, as we know it, is their cattle ranch, their farm, where they let us all graze. Now, Megamind is wearing the black clothes in order to fight Titan, a hybrid that he created. And if I know movies about clones, I bet Titan's going to turn evil, just like how Mewtwo did in Pokemon. So maybe the Men in Black can appear and disappear because of the advanced technology or access to portals, but they're trying to rectify a mistake that they made when they thought it might have been a good idea to create the hybrids, the Men in Black. Personally, I like the idea that the Men in Black are time travellers, but I do think we covered that a few weeks ago. Anyway, Megamind refers to his and the Titan antics as, quote-unquote, the game, which is how politics gets referred to by politicians. Megamind is shocked when Titan wants to kill him with laser beams instead of just taking him to jail. So what if this is kind of happening now, like a form of hostile takeover? Maybe this is what all that stuff on telly and in adverts between 2003 to 2010ish were about. Loads of references to new money and old money. I remember that about PayPal. I think it was a PayPal advert or an eBay advert. They were all dressed in fancy clothes with the fucking pinky fingers up and squinting their eyes, you know. And about new money and old money, new money overtaking old money, you know. Titan could be the Tony Stark kind of guy, but instead of being good, still wants to be bad, but he wants to be worse. Even though being bad would be objectively the best thing to do, because by killing Megamind, it ends Megamind. But by killing him, he becomes a criminal in the eyes of justice, which links it back to justice being a problem through the film, like for the kids to try and get that in the kids' heads that justice is kind of flawed. But I don't know why you'd want to teach kids that. We now find out that Metro Man was just hiding out, just like when Simba in The Lion King disappears to chill out in the jungle, or when Mewtwo explodes the laboratory on Cinnabar Island to go and live on his own. Metro Man has done the same, but instead of becoming vegetarian and hanging around with a pig in the woods, or starting his own cloning facility with a brainwashed nurse, Metro Man wants to be a musician. Just wants to sing songs. Again, very similar story. The idea that the hero didn't realise that they had a choice. They thought that they had to be that certain way until they have a moment of realisation, and then they start to live on their own terms, which usually is then a way to try and teach the children watching that they shouldn't think of themselves and do what it is they want. They should do accept their position in life and do what's best for society, like fucking roll onto their backs and stare at the ceiling while society fucks a roll into them, which is a really fucking weird analogy. Moving on, another interesting thing this film teaches is that the journalist, who's had more screen time really than Metro Man, knows loads of stuff. She knows everything, this journalist, and she even has the means to tell the public via a broadcasting van that she constantly drives around in. But for some reason, she chooses not to tell people facts or the truth. Instead, she's just gallivanting around with this alien, talking about how best to find another alien or dispose of an alien-human hybrid. So what's the message here? Is the message that the media don't actually tell us what's going on? Or is the message similar to earlier when it was trying to stop kids from aspiring to their dream career? It's pretty much telling kids that even if you have your dream job, you should throw it all away for a chance at a relationship. There's a scene where Megamind's back in prison, but he again is rescued by Minion. Could it be possible that instead of creating clones of themselves, the mega-rich have instead created armies of cyborgs or human-animal hybrids to ensure that their plans are executed? So even if the regular people of the world were to rise up against the rich, evil elites of the world, their monkey, fish, robot companions would still carry out their work or protect them at all costs. Titan says, and I can quote him, "There is no Easter Bunny, Tooth Fairy, or the Queen of England." So, could this be the Americans saying that the Queen is a weird social construct, or that she's an actor put there by Americans, or possibly the aliens, to help keep control over a country without having to actually do anything themselves? Maybe just use their shape-shifting abilities to replace the Queen of England. Maybe that's what people mean when they say that the Queen is a lizard. Conspiracy theorists have been saying it for years. Maybe the person who is currently the Queen of England isn't actually the Queen of England at all, but a shape-shifting alien, and the real Queen of England is hidden in a cave somewhere, or inside some fucking form of fish tank or cryostasis chamber hidden inside the moon. There's then a big fight scene, and I think we're coming towards the end of the film, where Megamind uses holographic robots to attack Titan, a thing that's been seen in like the Spider-Man film. There's the second one of the most recent, the ones in the MCU now, the second one where I think they're in London, I can't remember, where they go against Mysterio anyway. But that's something that gets thrown around by conspiracy theorists all the time, innit? All over the world, the idea that they're going to fake a meteorite or an alien invasion using holograms and technology, like the idea of invading a country with cardboard cutouts, like the modern day equivalent of that, or leaving fake aeroplanes or pictures of aeroplanes on fields to make a country look more guarded than it actually is, which I think is something that countries have done before. We then see symbology that's been at least 2 other films as well. There's a building that gets thrown, but the way that the scene is shown, it makes it look like the spire is coming up out of the ground into the street, just like at the end of the Incredibles film where the floors... at the end of the Incredibles film where the floor gets like ripped up by the miner, the underminer, the mole man. And also, though, this other film where the floors go all weird and Inception and the buildings start moving. Kind of looks like both of them. That's kind of saying that, maybe Inception's saying you're living in a dream, it's not real. Whilst The Incredibles is saying they're coming from Agartha, they're going to get us from beneath the world. Metro Man comes back to save the day though now, but it's actually Megamind in disguise, using a hologram and technology to protect the world from a crisis that he created himself in order to look like a better person, garner favour, and possibly sell more merchandise of his own brand. This is very, very similar to the stuff that is alleged to have come from Werner von Braun, or the typical conspiracy referred to as problem, reaction, solution. The idea that someone very powerful creates a problem that only they can solve. We then see another weird nod to another film, and it's the idea of an alien removing powers, and it kind of reminds me of that scene in Space Jam at the end, because, where they put the powers back in using the basketball, because Megamind uses a gun to suck orange light out of Titan to remove the alien powers. And we then see a little mention of reincarnation too, because Minion dies, and gets thrown into the water behind and seems to just come back to life. And if you're into reincarnation, try mine and Jimmy Budd's show Truth Seeking. I think it's like 3 episodes ago. You can find that on Threshold FM. Search the app. But he comes back to life. And could this be a way to say that when an alien fish does die, it comes to Earth to become a regular fish? Could it be a way to say that whatever dies on Earth is trapped here for eternity? Maybe that's why Minion the fish mentions he's going so far away as he dies. But then it turns out that it's all a joke. That death itself is a joke. They don't die. Is that the takeaway from this film? We're shown that Megamind is about to die in the beginning, and then Metro Man dies halfway through, and Minion dies at the end, except none of them have actually died. Maybe Megamind is a movie teaching children, or perhaps the souls that are currently inhabiting the children, if you remember the Little Mermaid episode, that they are currently trapped here forever, and they're going to be forever recycling through different organisms. Maybe it's a weird time-travelling tale, though, without the time travel. The end of the film is the same as the beginning, but instead of worshipping Metro Man, they're now worshipping Megamind. There's even the same coat and people from the same scene in the start of the film, which could be to make the film cheaper to produce, but it seems like it's more so saying life repeats. And except inside the coat this time, it's Metro Man in the coat and not robot droids. Almost as if to say that, all of time has to happen. Or maybe it's to get us used to the idea that for whatever reason, we're all stuck in this time loop, playing through the same world over and over again. But sometimes, maybe, the roles reverse. Or maybe every child gets the chance to be inhabited by a different demon and will experience the world in a seemingly infinite number of ways. But realistically, it's just a film that teaches children that the bad guy is actually the good guy. So it probably was just a way of readying young people and parents for the era of fake news. And that's it, guys, from me for this week. That's it from Pause for Thought. We've got HDR on later on at 5, followed by Jimmy Budd at 7 on Threshold FM. Thanks for listening, and I'll fucking see you in a bit. Never done one without music before, so just to fill up these last 20 seconds, I thought I'd let you know my new book's out, mate. My new book's called More You Know. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it for £2.50 as an ebook, or about a tenner. I get the same money from both, I think. It's up to you, however you want it. I'd probably go for the ebooks, it's cheaper, and I get the same money, but that's just me. Fucking, if you read it, nice one, send us a message, let me know what you think, and I'll fucking see you in a bit, guys.